And we're back. Hopefully y'all didn't wait too long for this video, but as promised, we're taking a look at what I call television entities. I know I said that I promised another video like this pretty much last year, but never got around to it, but hey, now we're here, so fuck off. So what are television entities? Well, I assume most of us watched TV growing up, and hell, I reckon most of you are the last generation to actually watch TV, as we get ever so closer to the streaming age being the absolute only way to get entertainment. But for the rest of us, television holds a very special place in our hearts and minds. The thing is though, television being the way it is, live and whatnot, has sometimes proven to hold some of the strangest events in human history. Well, that might be hyperbolic, but still, it's freaky nonetheless. These events are what I call television entities. Ooh. Now, what exactly counts as a television entity? Well, it's pretty much anything that lies outside of the media, really. So, no commercials, no TV shows, or anything like that. Sort of that other stuff that exists outside the parameters. Stuff like the emergency alert system, which I made a video of, television intrusions, sign-offs, etc. There are really so many of these that I won't be covering literally everything. Maybe someday we can come back to this topic in depth at a later time or a later Traumathon, but for now, I wanted to focus on the usual suspects, or maybe in this case, the unusual suspects. And just FYI, I won't be focusing on PSAs today, mainly because that's been a highly requested entry for Traumathon since forever now, but we'll cover that someday, don't worry. But if there are any particular PSAs that are in themselves super strange, then I'll cover those right here, starting with the most infamous PSAs in the world that you really don't see too much nowadays: missing persons. Yes, this sort of stuff is even past my time, honestly. See, back before the internet and cell phones and such, spreading information was a lot more limited. When people went missing, people more commonly use posters and such, much like today, sure, but nowadays it's easier to just spread that info online, and it's way faster too, and it gets more eyes, as opposed to just locals. But there was an alternative way that potentially could have helped more than just posters spread across the community, and that was through local television.
Hundreds of children go missing each year in Canada. Confronting this frightening phenomenon is Child Find, an agency dedicated to finding our lost ones. There is no border to stop the search, and no place too small to look.
Yeah, imagine watching Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and after the episode was done, you saw this shit. It's kinda unnerving, in my opinion anyways. Now, like I said, I didn't really grow up with this stuff. Well, not entirely, but I'll get to that in a bit. And I'd reckon most of you didn't. Still, some people have, and I imagine it's not necessarily the best thing a child could see. It's sort of a creepy thing, really, just thinking about it even now. I mean, most of these are from 40 or so years ago, and many of these people might still be missing, or worse, dead. We can take some solace that some of these people have been found, but let's be realistic here. 600,000 people go missing annually, and out of those 600,000, only a small fraction of them are acknowledged to be missing. And by that I mean most of you will likely never see a missing persons poster of most of those people, or even realize that most of them are missing. And let's not forget that an even smaller portion of people get their stories blown up by the media, and seeing as how the media tends to play favorites as to who they cover, i.e. beautiful young people, out of those 600,000 people that go missing, many of them remain undiscovered pretty much forever. Most bodies are just never found. People are never found. Then you see this, a stark reminder of how people just vanish, no longer to be seen by anyone. Some of these people are just children. Now, granted, most kids probably didn't see these little missing persons PSAs, as they were more likely to show these during the night, but they do in fact show these during prime time. And that's the time when they show family-friendly shows. And so we get kind of insensitive moments like this.
Missing Colleen Osborne, now age 16, last seen Daytona Beach, Florida, March 15th, 1984. Call 800-843-5678.
We now return to Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer.
Wow. Hey Timmy, hope you enjoy fucking Rudolph after being reminded that you could be snatched up and murdered like this chick right here. She was motherfucking 16 years old. No older than you, Tim boy. Enjoy your fucking movie. But even among these sorts of PSAs, there are some that really stand out for being a bit different. And one of the creepiest ones I personally saw, not in real life of course, were the Canal 5 missing persons PSA. Take a look.
Pedimos ayuda para localizar a Víctor Gama Tavera, de 20 años de edad. Se ignora su paradero desde el 28 de mayo del año 2000. Esteban Mendoza Juárez, de 24 años, se ignora su paradero.
Now, Mexico has always had an issue with missing people, for a variety of reasons, really. So, these kinds of PSAs were very frequent, especially in Canal 5. Though, of course, the most famous of these PSAs was the one involving Selene Delgado Lopez. I really can't explain to you why Selene's photo is so popular, but it probably has something to do with this sort of creepypasta / meme thing that has been spread throughout Latin America, where it's pretty much the same footage, but with creepy overlaid photos and some slight jump scare sounds. This photo, by the way, is actually Derek Todd Lee. Not the real dude, just a police sketch of what Lee was interpreted to look like from eyewitness reports. Lee, of course, being known infamously as the Baton Rouge Killer. Imagine that. Seriously. Being a missing woman, probably dead somewhere, and having people 30 to 40 something years later compare you to a real-life serial killer because your photo just happened to be that creepy. What a great legacy to leave behind. Of course, some people also mention the creepy photo of Manuel Rosas, which, to be fair, is just nothing. Like, really, it's just a vague shape of a head surrounded or possibly emitting light. These black and white photos are especially jarring when you consider other photos shown in this one particular commercial are pretty much all in color. Still, we can't just blame the photos themselves. I mean, it's just the whole vibe, really. Again, it's just eerie to think about how most of these people were most likely never found, or that they may have been found but just as a corpse. And I don't know which is worse. Coming back to America though, one of the most famous of these PSAs would happen to be the ones that involved Joanna Lopez, an infamous little missing persons PSA, and possibly one of the worst. And by worst, I mean, well, we'll talk about it in a bit, but just take a look. So not only is it scary, but it's almost, no, it's not even almost, it totally is insensitive. I mean, that's it. There's no voice to tell you who this is. There's no additional info, where she was last seen, when she was missing, age, height, nothing. Just Joanna Lopez with a terrible, grainy, washed out photo. And keep in mind, this was a long time ago when CRTs weren't really the best quality, and it was really late at night. It's a sign-off, meaning it's the last program of the night. Most people by now would have turned off their TV. It's hard to say really why it was so half-assed, or if this TV station did the same to their other missing persons, but many have attributed this PSA to just how missing person minorities are treated, or more accurately, mishandled. It's just how it's been, unfortunately. But speaking of sign-offs, hey, that's a weird thing, ain't it? We talked briefly about sign-offs and the lonely feeling you get when the static stays on but nothing accompanies it whatsoever. Check out that video here, by the way. But what about around the world? What kind of sign-offs can we expect from international TV?
A partir de este momento, finaliza el horario de protección al menor. La presencia de los mismos frente al televisor es responsabilidad absoluta de los señores padres.
Wow! That fucking sucks. Thanks, Argentina. Well, if you don't know, or maybe you do, Argentina has a pretty wholesome, or maybe I should say attempted wholesome little message about taking care of your children, and that what they consume on television is up to the responsible adults, aka the parents that they live with, or the guardians. This whole shit is actually so disturbing that I couldn't even believe it to be real. I genuinely thought that this was some sort of analog horror mock-up, especially with this split frame image that just happens to be there, but no, it's real. The lack of colors is likely due to a television error or recording error, and this image likely appears for more than just a split second. But still, the distorted laughing, the single image, the creepy fact that broadcasting stops as soon as this message stops, it's all just horrible vibes, genuinely. So let's settle down with something maybe not so creepy. This is the sign-off for the broadcasting network. I'm going to say this wrong. Televisão Público de Angola. From the country of, well, Angola. And for many, this sign-off is debatably creepy. Some people thought it was very calming, while many others thought, wow, that's fucking weird. Either way, it doesn't really compare to, say, Australia or Hong Kong's super fucking weird sign-offs. Why these two in particular? Well, take a look. Wow, okay. Well, anyways, here's Hong Kong.
Channel operated by Television Broadcasts Limited, closing down transmission for the night.
Man. Okay. Well, I'm not a native to either of these locations, but what the fuck, seriously? Can someone actually tell me why these two countries are obligated to show the Queen during sign-offs? I especially love that Hong Kong, I mean, this was during the UK's rule over Hong Kong, so this really rubs it in the face of every citizen of Hong Kong at the time that, bitch, you belong to us, and we're gonna remind you every single fucking night. But how about this though? This is VPRO, a liberal Protestant channel from the Netherlands, and it has some probably the most surreal bumpers I've ever seen from any channel around the world. Check a look.
Als u het één avond per week eens anders wilt zien dan u het gewend bent te zien, dan moet u wel laten merken dat u dat wilt. Bel daarom een van de volgende nummers en neem het VPRO-lidmaatschap erbij. Doe het nu, voordat de wet van de grote getallen gaat vertellen dat iedereen maar hetzelfde moet willen.
Shout out to Adam Martin for having this compilation of clips at their highest quality. Yeah, so I mean, fuck. What do I say to any of this shit? The melting one is probably the first encounter of this cursed channel I've had, and it's really, really bad. I mean, is that moaning I hear? Is it like ejaculating? I don't get it. I'm really not trying to be crass, by the way. I just mean, not totally. But what is this supposed to mean? And secondly, this one? I mean, what the fuck? Why is this so bad? There's also a mouth one that was also pretty bad. It's just straight up horror, man. But let's move on from sign-offs to broadcast intrusions, aka hijacked signals. Now, when it comes to broadcast hijackings, there's loads of them that exist, but unfortunately, as fascinating as these topics are, most of them are completely made up, or most of them aren't captured on TV, surprisingly enough, or they're just not really too interesting to totally cover. I know that Captain Midnight is something a lot of people like talking about, but it's really not that big of a deal. In many cases, they're just as tamed as this one, or sometimes really politically active, and I just don't want to get too into that. So instead, I'll talk about a few broadcast hijackings that are my personal favorites just because they're really creepy, or because they're really interesting, or because they have some weird backstory to them. The zombie hijacking I already covered in my EAS video, by the way, and the Wyoming incident, I know a lot of people are probably going to bring that up. Don't worry, we'll cover it in a separate video. First, there's the infamous Max Headroom incident, in which someone or a group of people interrupted the broadcast of WGN-TV and WTTW, two local Chicago stations, for seemingly no good reason to be hacked, honestly. Like, these dudes straight up hacked the channel on 3 separate occasions. Well, both of these channels, I should say. The first seemed like it didn't really go too well, as the voice of Max Headroom was completely muffled and unintelligible. The second was much longer, probably because it was during an airing of Doctor Who late at night, and honestly, who gives a shit about old school Doctor Who? So the intrusion lasted for a minute and a half before being cut off. In this full version, we see a dude wearing a Max Headroom mask, talking about the station's broadcasters, talking about clutch cargo or something, having a dildo as his middle finger. Did you notice that, by the way? I didn't notice that until I rewatched this. Flipping off the camera and having his asshole spanked. Rad. Now, it's unclear exactly how the perpetrators did this, as well as who and why, but speculation ranges from disgruntled employees to weird college kids pranking the station, and likely this was all broadcasted in a van nearby the 2 stations. And though at the time they had faced upwards to $10,000 in charges and a year in jail, thanks to the statute of limitations, if these guys came out now and admitted they did it, they'd be completely free to do so without getting charged. And yet, nobody to this day has been revealed. Speaking of being unrevealed, let's talk about the less talked about intrusion made by the Ashtar Galactic Command, most notably by its representative, Vrillin. Now, here's a small snippet of the intrusion as it was possibly seen back then. I'll explain what I mean by that, but just keep in mind, this is a very, very long intrusion. So this is just a fraction of what might have happened. Take a look.
We speak to you now to send us as we have done to your brothers and sisters all over this, your planet Earth. We come to warn you of the destiny of your race and your world, so that you may communicate to your fellow beings the course you must take to avoid the disaster which threatens your world and the beings on other worlds around you. This is in order that you may share in the great awakening as the planet passes into the new age of Aquarius. This is our message. I really appreciate.
So right off the bat, let's talk about the elephant in the room. This audio is likely not the audio first heard when the channel was hacked at the time. In fact, it's just a recreation of what just happened. The true audio back then is most likely lost to time and remains lost media to this day. There's no video of the incident ever happening either, but various reports do confirm that it did in fact happen. These various reports also claim that Vrillin isn't even the correct name, meaning much of this entire transcript is unreliable and possibly incorrect in many ways we just can't even pinpoint. Not like we could have pinpointed the perp either, because unfortunately this all sort of crumbles from here. Nobody knows who did it, though the authorities had claimed that whoever did do this has a considerable amount of technical know-how, which, okay, sure, but at the same time, that seems almost contradictory because, well, the station at the time was using a pretty funky broadcasting tower that made it super easy to hijack at the moment. So was it really done by some smarty pants who were from a local college or something? Or just someone who knew just enough? Either way, the purpose of this broadcast intrusion remains unsolved to this very day, and hey, there's a likely chance it could have been aliens. Or not. Because apparently this is what they look like, and I don't think that's Vrillin. Is that him? That's not him. Now, as we travel to Europe, specifically the Czech Republic, we see another hijacking that was very divisive despite what the hijacking portrayed. Take a look. See that? Well, I mean, of course you did. It's a nuclear fucking bomb that just exploded in the middle of the grassy knolls of... Wow, I'm not going to pronounce that, or even try. Now, obviously, a nuke did not just randomly go off in the Czech Republic for no reason. This was actually just a hijacking that happened during the live airing of a show called Panorama, which is just a live stream of many peaceful locations in the Czech Republic, which I guess meant it was the perfect target for this really funny hoax. Or is it a hoax? Well, that's the actual argument for a long time, as the artists who committed this act pleaded that they were under their own artistic liberties to commit this prank. The prank, of course, being that they hijacked this channel just to show this CG recreation of what a nuclear bomb exploding in this town would look like. Essentially, they were saying that this was an act of art and not an act of misinformation. Therefore, it cannot be counted as a hoax or a deliberate lie to the people. Many citizens surprisingly agreed, and many actually enjoyed the prank itself. But there were also a ton who were really outraged by this prank, saying it was harming the tourism of that one region, as now people would start thinking it was unsafe or a nuclear wasteland. But in the end, the artists were given 200 hours of mandatory community service, a decision that also had people torn apart. There's actually a whole documentary on this that has English subtitles, so if any of you have the time and you're interested in seeing how this one innocuous prank split the nation apart, then I'd suggest watching it. It's kind of crazy actually just how much of this prank is just tied to politics and the history of Czech art. Really fascinating stuff. And lastly, the one hack that I genuinely think is pretty creepy, this one.
Jesus Christ, help us all, Lord. 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 Jesus Christ, help us all, Lord.
That is fucking weird. This incident occurred on the 7 Network channel in Australia back in 2007, and this audio clip played over and over again during the airing of the show Mayday for 6 minutes straight. As weird and creepy as that is, it doesn't really compare how the network executives responded, which in itself was pretty fucking weird. See, because the spokesperson for the 7 Network at the time stated that it wasn't a network hacking or hijacking, and that it was just a part of an original programming, which happened to just loop over and over again. It wasn't some sort of intrusion at all. They also stated that the clip didn't have the speaker saying, Jesus Christ, help us all, Lord, but actually, Jesus Christ, one of the Nazarenes, which is like,
Jesus Christ, help us all, Lord.
That doesn't sound like that at all. That is just a blatant lie on their part, but it gets even weirder because it turns out the clip is not from the show Mayday or any other original programming, but actually a news broadcasting clip of a news van in Iraq getting ambushed by opposing forces. I actually doubted this was the case for a long time, mainly because when this TV incident is talked about, people never really include what the clip was, but doing my own digging, I was actually able to find the video itself in which it came from. The video is titled Halliburton Ambush Iraq, and the timestamp is 2:07. Now, I can't show the video because it might be too much, as it is footage of a news van getting shot at in the middle of a war zone, but I can at least show you a bit more of the audio to prove its validity.
Jesus Christ, help us all, Lord. They ain't fired a shot.
So the origin of that sound has been solved, but not by the network itself. This was found by independent researchers, not hired by the network, and to this day, 7 Network has not acknowledged this finding at all, leaving it all up in the air as to what happened that one night they aired Mayday. My guess? I think they were hijacked for a moment. This seems way too deliberate of a message to just sort of be a coincidence and from a random broadcasting of this news van getting attacked. No, it just seems too convenient. I think the network knows they were hacked but don't want to admit it, either because it makes the network look bad or because it might invite other pirate broadcasters to hack into their network, or both. Or maybe it was a political message that they knew about that they didn't want to acknowledge. Either way, we'll never really be sure if this was some freak accident or foul play, and we might never know, honestly. And so that concludes our look at television entities, many of which most of us have never seen. Most of us might even experience them for the first time in this video. Now, with television being part of a bygone era and everything switching to digital, we may never experience any of this anymore. So hopefully with this video, we preserve just a bit more of that history that we'd otherwise miss out on. And if you don't like it, go fuck yourself.